Welcome to another episode of the Fertility Conversations podcast. Today, we're joined by a lovely guest, Dr. Wiyatta. She's a licensed psychologist who divides her time between clinical practice, training, and consulting. As a reproductive and fertility psychologist, Dr. Wiyatta provides therapy for women and couples wanting to become parents, facilitates intended parents consultations, and conducts third-party evaluations for gestational surrogates, as well as egg and sperm donors. She joins us today to discuss the impact of infertility on our mental health. So welcome, Dr. Wiyatta, and thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, Ola. Thank you for having me.
Yay. We usually start off by saying, tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you'd like to share.
So I'm Dr. Wiyatta. I am, like you already introduced me, but I actually started off as a forensic psychologist working in the prisons way back when, and transitioned into private practice in 2020 during the pandemic.
Right.
And at that time, I started working with professional women and focusing on, going through career challenges and all that, and a specialty in reproductive health. And
Right.
the reproductive health came about because I had some reproductive challenges in 2016. And during that time, going through my fertility challenges, I realized how anxiety provoking it was for me. And being like, I had all the tools, I had a great support system. My thought was, if I'm going through this, I wonder what it's like for the average person who doesn't have all the necessary skills.
Right.
And I said, I want to be able to talk to individuals struggling with infertility, whether or not they have a great support system, but just so they can have somewhere they can go to talk. So that's how I transitioned into reproductive health.
And we're so glad that you did, because again, it's so much, it's really needed, right? Infertility is so hard. Like I said, the anxiety is ridiculous, the fear, especially if you've experienced perhaps previous losses or you've been trying to conceive for such a long time. It's so
Yeah,
hard.
it is. And they compare the anxiety and depression linked to infertility, similar to when one has been diagnosed with cancer.
Which is just horrible.
Yeah, and it's not talked about. So many people
No.
don't talk about it. What's interesting I'm finding is I must have this thing written on my head. Like I meet strangers and they start telling me their fertility stories, and I'm like, oh, okay. But what happens is there's so many people who struggle with it. When
Yeah.
you just sit and listen, so many people struggle, and you're like, I wonder why there's such a taboo, there's such a brokenness attached to it.
Yeah.
Because make it seem like, oh, you can just get pregnant. And I think it has a lot to do with us growing up. Growing up,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, if you have sex, you're gonna get pregnant.
Yeah.
It's locked in. Then you come to find out, well, maybe that's not the case. And then you feel like the only one, this can only be happening to me, when in reality, that's not the case.
Exactly. It's happening to a lot of people. And WHO has recently said it's 1 in 6 across the
One
globe.
thing.
That's a lot of people.
And I think for couples, it's either 1 in 8 couples or 1 in 4. I get my numbers wrong, but I want to say it's 1 in 4 couples that
That's a
struggle.
lot of people. Millions.
Yeah. And I think if you're trying to get, when you're trying to get pregnant, you're more aware of the statistics. But think
Mm-hmm.
about all those who have like a chemical pregnancy, who
Yeah, we
it
never even know.
without even knowing,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
It's a lot.
So it's a lot.
Well, we thank you that you're here to provide support and to shed some light on many aspects of infertility and mental health that we all worry about.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Firstly, how do we cope with infertility? Right? We spoke about it now, talking about the fact that it's highly stigmatized, there's so much shame, there's guilt. How do we
Mhm.
even deal with it when we don't even realize it's not just us? Right?
One of the first thing is to recognize is a medical condition. How do you cope with medical conditions? Do you take blame for medical conditions? You don't usually, but so it's about shifting that mindset with fertility, because like I said, we take ownership of it. Oh, it's because I did ABC that I'm able to conceive. And again, it's all the messages that we've been told, but really it's a medical condition. So you cope with it by first accepting that that in itself is the case. This is something medical. Secondly, I always say to clients when they're taking ownership, because we become so tunnel vision when we're struggling with infertility. It's about that end result.
Yeah.
But when we're focused on the end result, we don't look at the journey. We don't look at what's happening in the day to day. So my question to clients is always, who were you? What did you do? What did you enjoy before you had a fertility diagnosis? Because we forget that. And then start to bring some of those things back into your life. That's not saying you're not acknowledging, you're not experiencing the anxiety, the shame, the guilt that comes with infertility, but you're also living. You're experiencing life as this one part of life is happening, because it's really one part of your life. So as this one major part of your life is happening, you want to continue to live. So did you enjoy cooking? Did you enjoy going out for walks? Did you enjoy going to concerts? Start to bring those things back into your life as much as you can handle, and really also take breaks. Like take breaks. I would say give yourself time where like maybe every day you give yourself 15, 20 minutes where you go all in and be sorry for yourself with infertility. I can't do it. Go there.
Yeah.
And remove yourself from it, because then you are still acknowledging that this horrible thing is happening that you have no control of and you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. So that's one way that I encourage clients to deal. Continue to live and find balance. Balance means if you're spending all your time researching infertility, researching fertility stuff, you might want to spend some other time doing some other things that bring you joy. You know? Yeah. Because you know how they say the thing that we continue to focus on is the thing we're going to continue to just experience, receive, attract. So if you start to also focus on, oh, I remember like I love going to the beach.
Right.
What if I went to the beach maybe one day a week? Because we forget, just normally when you're not struggling with infertility, you're so busy in life, we forget the things that bring us joy anyway. So when you add that extra thing to it, we forget. So what if you just add, one day a week, I'm gonna go take a walk in the park because I used to enjoy that, or I'm gonna go and get my favorite cup of tea, whatever it is.
I love that. And that really actually it's a conscious effort. You have to make that conscious effort, right? Because
Exactly.
you're not going to see that. But
Exactly.
the normal mind tells us to just focus on this and research and, try to know everything you need to know and connect to people who understand. And you just in that
Yes.
space 24/7.
And there's only so much the mind can take, because
Yeah.
one thing we always say, because fertility is trauma based, and one thing we say is the brain doesn't differentiate between real threat and perceived threat. So if you're constantly in this thing where you're expecting something to go wrong, and you're just constantly in that space, the brain is constantly in high alert. So then is your body even ready to like prepare itself to do what it's supposed to do? But again, that's something you will discuss with your doctor. And also the other thing is, how do you cope with infertility? You can go and get therapy, but you want to meet with a fertility specialist, a reproductive endocrinologist and infertility doctor, because they can give you all the medical necessities. They can do the different tests with you that you need to do to make sure to see what is the cause. If there is if there's an underlying condition or something that's,
Right.
called.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And of
Welcome.
course, with anxiety also comes sometimes jealousy, right? With the friends that perhaps had it easier.
Yeah.
And you also, for example, a friend might be having a baby shower, you want to attend, but at the same time, you're not in the right space,
Mhm.
mindset or mind frame. So how do we balance that? Deal with the jealousy, but also be happy for others while we are sad for ourselves and not
I
up
love
here. Yeah.
I love that question, because that is so common. Because with the jealousy, you love your friend or your family member, whoever it is, and you want to support them, but you're also feeling broken. And so you have to acknowledge to yourself, I love this person, but right now in the space that I am, I can't go to a baby shower. So what may it look like for me to celebrate this person without being in this baby environment that is anxiety provoking for me, that is emotionally stressful for me. Maybe you can speak to that person like, hey, this is what's going on with me. I want you to know as much information as you want to give.
Yeah.
I want you to know, like, I love you, I support you. I can't go through this with you right now. How else can we celebrate you? Can I come over after the shower? Can I make you dinner? Can I help you? Um, can we go to dinner? Can we just have a girls' night together, or individual night together? Something else that you know you can handle, or just like, or maybe even send a gift. You
Right.
know, I'm sending a gift. I would love to be there with you, but I can know that I love you and I support you in every way. Maybe it's someone you haven't shared, because some people don't feel comfortable if they're struggling with infertility, sharing with someone who is pregnant.
Yeah.
And maybe you haven't shared that information, and just say, I can't be there for you. I would love to be there for you and I hold this time in high regard, but I just am unable to attend. But no, I love you. But what we have to know in that moment is the person who comes first in your life is you. And we forget that. You have to come first, because if you're going to go to the baby shower and you're going to be like crying and a mess, and you're going to come home and there's going to be anxiety, you're going to be depressed. Why are you putting yourself through all that? And that's where the guilt comes in. Acknowledge the guilt. I am jealous that they're having a baby and I'm not. That's the reality. So if you try to deny it, that feeling is going to get even bigger. Acknowledge it to yourself. I'm jealous that they're having a baby. Does it mean I don't love them? No, it doesn't. It means that I'm mad at my body right now because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So it's all about acknowledging it and accepting.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that really helps because, again, oftentimes we just don't know what to say. They really want to show up, but like you said, what's the point of showing up if you're gonna go there and be crying or just miserable, and then it doesn't really help the people at the baby shower either anyway. So
Yeah.
you're probably better off, like you said, communicating as much as possible or choosing to hang out at a later time.
Exactly. And I would say this, there's no timeline. Maybe it's like years later and you haven't had a baby and you decided, oh, I'm going to be child free. It still doesn't mean you have to go to a baby shower if you don't feel you can emotionally handle that. Sometimes you
Yeah.
will, and sometimes you're like, I don't have it in me. That's fine too. There's no timeline for when you should be like, okay, you should be over it now. You listen to what's truly happening with you. And those relationships that really matter, let them know they matter. And some people will not accept it or whatever, but be honest with yourself with what you can handle.
Thank you. And I love the fact that you talked about the reality that there's no set time that by now it should be over, because again, that extends to grief when people
Yes.
experience a baby loss. And, oftentimes people want to tell you, well, it happens so often, just move on, another one is going to come, the right one that is going to stay will come. So just move on and try again.
You know what I do? I have sometimes I'll write out a list of things for people to share with their family and friends, like things not to say to
Oh.
me. These are the things you shouldn't say to someone, because you as the person dealing, it's funny because when you're the person dealing with grief, you also try to manage other people's emotions and
Yeah.
how they feel about what you're going through. So if someone says something to you that's like, oh, there's going to be another one, you know where it's coming from. They're trying to be supportive, but what they don't realize is it's also kind of like dismissing what's happening right here, right now.
Yeah.
Because we always want to get to like, oh, let's feel better, let's feel better. But I don't feel better in this moment. Let me experience. It might be for like 5 minutes, it might be for 20 minutes. It might be for a day. Let me experience it, and then I can get to this other side. Because grief, as we know, it does this. And then we're fine, and then oops, I'm back in that loop. So when people say those things, like, I know, just be like, allow me to experience what's happening right now. I'm not where you are, and I understand you want to be supportive of me, and this is coming from a loving place, but it's heartbreaking, and it's hurtful when you say that. If you say to someone it's hurtful, you're not accusing them of anything. You're saying your words are hurtful to me. So be kind and be mindful. Maybe just say, whatever you need right now, I'm going to be here for you. I don't know. Even if you say, I don't know how to show up for you. I don't know how to show up when someone has a miscarriage, but I just want to sit with you. That's
Right.
good because you're being honest. Yeah. We try to fix it too much. Like, don't fix
Yes.
my emotions. Just let it be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that helps a lot of listeners to understand that, because I think as a society, or even wherever you are across the globe, we always want to help by finding a solution, but
Yeah.
sometimes there isn't any.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Because, you know, the hard thing with miscarriage or pregnancy loss or not getting pregnant is, let's say if it is a miscarriage, there was nothing, no evidence, no physical evidence,
Yeah.
no baby. So people don't have something that they're going to bury. And, you know, let's just take in the African culture, you know, we love a big,
Mm-hmm.
flashy funeral. But if there's nothing, people don't connect with this thing that they've never met, this being that they've never met.
Right.
But for that parent who, from the time they found out, oh, you're pregnant, there was an instant connection there. They were planning graduation, they were planning weddings, they were planning whatever it is, they were planning for this person that they already connected to. So we have to allow them, be gracious enough to know, like, this person already connected, whether or not we have physical evidence of it. This person already connected on an emotional level. These people, if it's a couple, these people already connected on an emotional level with this life that never came to be.
Yeah. So well said. And even as you say that, even for the individual or the couple, even finding the right way to even grieve, because again, yes, they had it in their hearts, but they never actually had the baby in their
Mhm.
arms. So even that can be challenging. Like, how do they even grieve that properly?
Yeah. It is very challenging because there's also the thing where people are like, well, I didn't really have the baby. So
Mm-hmm.
what am I really grieving? It was the
Right.
idea of what, but you're grieving a life that you thought was you were going to have. You're grieving a dream that didn't come to fruition. You're grieving a future that was different. So I say to clients, so once you know you're pregnant, or I'm going to stick with pregnancy right now and not just
Right.
trying to conceive, right, for this particular moment. So once you find out that you're pregnant, you start all these plans.
Mm-hmm.
You also probably at some point you have been given a date of when this being is going
Exactly.
to come. So acknowledge, do you plant a tree? Do you write a poem? If you plant something, do you plant it on the date and then every year you acknowledge it because it's also growing? It's also a symbol of what was, what could have been.
Right.
Because symbolism is so real. If you were to write something, like I had this one client one time and she suffered a pregnancy loss like years ago and no one ever acknowledged it. And I said to her, why don't you write that story? Because that's part of your story.
Right.
Why don't you write this? And she wrote it, but funny, she took it a step further and she
Mm.
put it on Facebook. And I was like, oh, that was bold. She wrote it and she put just how she felt so isolated that no one acknowledged the loss that she had. And so many people came forward, like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know how to acknowledge this. So it could be writing something, it could be lighting a candle. But I love this, the symbolism of planting a tree.
Mm.
Whatever ritual that you find that resonates with you around maybe a birth date or the death date, because we can't forget the day that you have the loss. So those 2 days are really significant. Whatever ritual resonates with you, do that because it because you don't want to not acknowledge it either.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, then you're acknowledging this is what my dream was going to be. And that particular dream for this particular pregnancy is not that. Whether or not there are others, the fact is this one still existed for that period of time in your life.
So important.
Yeah.
And it's so great because again, like if you don't have that evidence and then you then have that plant or the tree that you look at or sit with every now and then, it helps you
Mhm.
to know that this was real. This
Yeah.
existed, right?
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
you didn't actually see any physical evidence, but this
Yeah.
is something.
And, speaking about that, physical evidence, your body shows you physical evidence. So if you're the person who's carrying, your body's going to show signs of physical evidence. And we don't know when those signs are going to go away. Because sometimes, what if you gain some weight as a result of the pregnancy and you're carrying the weight like for an extended period of time after? That's evidence for you. Every time someone comments on your weight,
Yeah.
that's a reminder. Oh, this was something that never came to be. So even something as simple as people saying, "Oh my God, you gained weight."
Yeah.
Well, you don't know what that's tied to,
Exactly.
So that's physical evidence in itself. A lot of times you just don't know what's going on with people, why they may gain or lose or whatever's going on with their body, but it's physical evidence of something sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that people listening will also note to just be mindful. Again, you just never know.
You don't.
You
You don't.
know. Thank you. And speaking more about infertility, the fact that it impacts so many people across the globe. And of course, there's always people saying just relax or just, eat this or eat that. And even for individuals or couples, you're never really sure when to take the next step and perhaps seek fertility treatment. So how do people know, is
Right.
this the right time, or should I just keep trying as best
Well,
as I can and eating healthy or whatever people like think is a better option?
so I think World Health Organization, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, and ESHRI, that's the one in Europe. I don't
Yeah.
want to mess up
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
SHRE.
It is, yeah.
I believe so. If you're under 35,
Mm-hmm.
if you've been trying for like, I think they give it up to a year and you haven't been successful in conceiving. But
Yeah.
if you're over 35, if it's about 6 months and you've been actively trying and you haven't been successful, then it's time to seek some sort of fertility consultation, some sort of consultation so so you can start at least doing some testing so they can see what's going on there.
Right. Okay.
Because
And
just
even, sorry?
relaxing ain't getting people pregnant.
I know. I mean, I understand that some people feel that, they have that friend or family or neighbor that as soon as they stop thinking about it or as soon as they relax, it just happened. Yes, we know those stories exist, but of course, that's not the reality for many. So
Right,
it's not a
right.
fix. And even with couples, deciding on what fertility treatment or even when to seek fertility treatment can be very different, right? So one person might think, yes, let's move on to this now. The other person thinks maybe not. And the other person might have other ideas of what to do. And there can be so much conflict, right? Because then you might think, well, he or she is not prioritizing it or they're not taking it seriously enough. And that can start to cause even issues within the relationship. And infertility is hard enough on the relationship anyway, so it can get quite complicated.
And I'm glad you bring that up. So once you have that knowledge about the 6 months or the 1 year, and I would say maybe once you've met with the reproductive or your because you're probably first going to meet with your gynecologist.
Right.
And then once they refer you, you want to start having the conversation like, okay, if we do have to go down this road, what is our expectation? Just without having all the knowledge, what is the expectation of what this is going to look like for us? What types of and then once you have the knowledge, maybe you've met with the reproductive endocrinologist and now you have some knowledge of IVF and IUI and all these other things. And you have some knowledge, you want to say, okay, how far are we willing to go?
Right.
What are we willing to do? What do we have a cap on how much we're willing to spend? Because that's real. It's a financial, it's
huge.
financial.
Yeah.
So make sure you have the conversation where you're aligned. Like in anything in a relationship, you want to be aligned and on the same page, as close to the same page as possible. So do we have the same expectations? What if it doesn't work after 9 tries? Do we want to keep going or do we want to stop after 2? Would we consider alternative, like alternative methods, if maybe after round 5 of, say, IVF, it hasn't worked, will we consider donor eggs? Would we, if it's female factor, do we
Right.
consider male a sperm donor? What are we willing to do? If, so conversation, the thing here is communicate, communicate, communicate. That's really important. And communicate to hear the other person. Whether or not you agree in the moment, it's probably okay to walk away and say, you know what, I'm feeling a lot of emotions around what we just talked about. Let's take a break and revisit it. I
Right.
think that's good too. So there's not pressure. And so you both always feel comfortable in coming to the table and saying, I'm struggling with this one. I don't think I really want to do 5 rounds. And the other person be like, well, it's my body and this is what I want to do. So have those tough conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So well said. And it's so important. And even the fact that you mentioned, again, there are so many parts to parenthood, and you might have to explore alternative paths. So even when the couple finally agrees to perhaps opt for alternative paths, and maybe they needed to use donor eggs or donor sperm, and then they do go on to have the children or perhaps planning for the future, should people be telling their kids? Because again, I think part of the trauma sometimes dealing with the fact that there's now loss of genetics, and then people feel, how are they going to judge them? Are they going to think they're the real parent or not the real parent? How are the friends and family and perhaps society going to perceive them, perceive their family? So even if they don't tell their entire
Network.
family or network, should they be telling their children?
They should. I was listening to one of the podcasts you had with the young lady. I don't remember if she was Irish or English, but so I go to a lot of fertility conferences, and a lot of times we have donor conceived individuals come.
Right.
And the theme remains is the longer you wait to tell the child, the more traumatic and the more separate they're going to be from the parent. The earlier the child knows, the more of a bonding and less they don't feel betrayed. So you wait till they're like 15, 16, 20, they're going to feel a sense of betrayal. Like, so my whole life has been a lie. But if they know from the beginning, you start telling them in age appropriate ways from a very young age. They already know who they are, but they already know, but yeah, you're my mom. You just use a different way to become my mom or my dad or my parent. So in today's world where we have access to these genetic kits and you can just put your information out there, that child's gonna find out. Like when we do the donor evaluations, we tell the donors now, there's no such thing as an anonymous donor anymore. They will find out. So you can share this information to the intended parents as well. I tell my intended parents, you can share this information with your offspring or they will find out, because there's too much, we have access to too much. It's not like 20, 30, 40 years ago where we didn't know, like, what are all these 23andMe when we didn't know about those. Now it's actually, so you don't have to tell them, but they will find out and they're going to feel betrayed. So there's so many books out there, so many resources that share how you can start to share with the child. As far as sharing with your network, that's a tricky one because culture plays a big role in that.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy for people in like the US and the UK to be like, oh, share, like tell you feel comfortable. But what if they're from a country where that is frowned upon?
Yeah.
How do you work? So what I do is I consult, if I have a client who maybe they're from, say, maybe a Middle Eastern country where they're like, oh, that's not going to fly, or maybe from Asia. I would usually consult with someone from that culture or refer out, because I don't want to be disrespectful and be like, oh, you want to share with your parents or your cousin or whoever. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. So we have to be respectful of the culture and see how we can work in the confines of the culture. But as far as the child itself, I would say yes to that, because they're going to find out. Because they always say when we're at these conferences, they always go, I knew there was something different. I couldn't quite put it.
I know.
It
Which
felt
is
like
interesting, right?
Yeah. Remember, did you see the Kerry Washington interview?
Yeah, I
Have you
did. I
seen?
saw that. Yeah. I actually
I
wanted to get
remember.
a book because of that. I
Yeah.
wonder if it's the secrecy I think
It
they're
is.
probably sensing there's a secret. That's probably what they
Yeah.
feel is different. Maybe the energy around
Yeah.
hope she never finds out, hope he never finds out, and somehow that is starting
Yeah.
to show without the parents realizing it.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
is that because it's so funny you say that because I was thinking this morning the secret that you as an individual you're running from and you're not being open with yourself with, you're going to always run from it. You're never going to be settled as long
Yeah.
as you're running from that truth. So this person is trying to find out, it's like, I know they love me. But there's just something I can't quite put my finger
Yeah.
on. And that's always what you hear. So there, it's just something that's always off.
Hmm.
And the thing about not telling the child is more about the parent feeling inadequate. Like, I'm not, it's your own stuff and what you know society has said, like, I'm not this enough.
I'm
Because
not
when,
the real quote unquote, whatever that
yeah,
means. Yeah.
but if you look at what the records show, I mean, of course, we can't say everybody's going to behave the same way, but most of the donor conceived individuals, when they're in these loving families, they're like, well, you're my mom, you're my dad, you're my
Yeah.
parent, you know. So
Yeah.
it's the parent that's really afraid of how they will be perceived and how they perceive themselves as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for stressing the importance of that. And I think even when you mention different cultures, and I think even in different, I mean, I don't speak for the entire continent of Africa, but I know that in certain countries around, it'll still be taboo. And the
Yeah.
reality is that even though it's happening everywhere. So for example, you look at Nigeria now, we have so many IVF clinics. There's a lot
So
of donor
okay.
sperm and donor eggs being used on the daily. And yet we're gonna
Mm-mm.
not talk about it and act like it doesn't exist. Of course it does exist,
Right. Right.
but it's people that rather not speak about it.
Exactly. You know, I was at a conference and I met, what was she? I think I met someone from Nigeria last year. I was at the American Society of Reproductive Medicine conference.
Ah,
I met someone from Nigeria and I was just like, I'm so happy that on the continent we're starting to talk about this stuff and
yeah,
saying this is real because it exists over there.
yeah.
It exists all over the world.
Everywhere, yeah. No one is exempt.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an African girl. I had the issue. So it's not because I was living in America, it's because my body was like, oh,
Yeah, you didn't all of a sudden change to a different person
yeah.
because
And it's
yeah.
interesting when people let stuff slip out, like in family, and they go, "Oh yeah, so and so had miscarriages." You like miscarriages?
Exactly. You're like, seriously? You
So
know what that means? And you never
you never thought that that will impact? Like, what is happening? Yeah,
yeah.
crazy.
That's not happening. I think it's interesting because different generations, so like my mom's generation, they're so secretive. Like even now, you ask her something, she's like, no. I'm like, come on. There is no, you cannot say no. You must know. Well, they just rather not talk about certain things because I think
Yeah.
the less they speak about it, the less it's real. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm. Yeah. It's so real. It's oh my God. Yeah, but and then when you think about the Black culture and you add the African, like the different African cultures to it, you like that's a whole different level right there of
Yeah.
then you add the religious aspect to
Ooh,
it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
know. And we just
Very
need to talk
powerful.
about it more, right? Because again, we can do a lot of prayers, and that's really helpful for a lot of people because of their
Yes.
beliefs. But it's also important to seek professional help, and counseling and therapy. They're not the same, and you can do both separately, but it's not one or the other. So I think again, that's something that we need to be aware of, because oftentimes people deal with a lot of trauma and they might get counseling from their religious bodies, but sometimes that's not their specialty,
It's not
right? So
clinical.
exactly. So it's better to seek professional help in terms of counseling and therapy when dealing with infertility. Of course, you can then add on the religious aspect, but it's
Definitely.
important to seek proper help.
Exactly. You get that proper help, you get that medical help. They all come together.
Exactly.
When people say, well, Black people don't do therapy, they pray. And I'm like, well, that's why God made therapists, because he
Yeah.
he was like, I got tired of hearing your problems. Go talk to them. I'm here being silly, but they can
Yeah.
all come together and work together.
Exactly. Yeah. And when we speak about therapy, what about even the individuals or couples looking into donor conception? Should they
Mhm.
also be having some kind of therapy before that and counseling? And even people, of course, surrogates and intended parents, should they be having that counseling and therapy just to prepare them perhaps for what they're about to embark on?
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend therapy because, especially as the intended parent, it's already so many things running through your head. But one thing that we do with the intended parents, if it's not like, we always recommend speak to someone, even if it's short-term therapy. What I've noticed with people who come for therapy for infertility related things is usually short-lived because they're like,
Ah,
I don't want to talk about their infertility for like 6 months. So usually, and I say to clients, I said, you might just need one session, you might need 4, you might need 20, but you
right,
will know when you will know. And they come to a sense of peace at some point, like, okay, I got the tools I need. But one thing we do with intended parents who need to use like a donor egg or donor sperm is we do a intended parent consultation. And really, that is just psychoeducation, where we talk about the expectations. We talk about, what is your expectation? What do you, if it's a couple, are you on the same page?
right.
How do you see this happening? Like, how is this information impacting you? We talk about disclosing, like you said, to the child, like, do you plan to tell? Because that's so huge. Do you plan to share this information with the offspring when the offspring is here? And so we just psychoeducate them on those types of things. And it brings a sense of, okay, I'm not weird. There's nothing
Right.
odd about me. Like this now, this is normal. Like hundreds of people go through this daily. So
Yeah.
you're not this oddball. And it just brings a sense of normalcy. So we can validate, I'm feeling so scared, I'm feeling weird. We can validate all those feelings for them.
So important.
Yeah.
What about for friends and family? If we decide to tell certain family members or friends, should they
Mhm.
also be having some sort of a counseling so that way they're better prepared as well? Because, oftentimes people might want to say things that they've been believed to be true because that's what people speak about. But
I mean, they could, but you can't make the friends and
right,
family go to therapy. I guess you pick who you're going to share this information with. You don't have to share it with everyone. Everyone doesn't need to have access to that information. So you decide, this is someone who I feel can handle it, can be aligned with how I'm choosing to share this information, and I'm going to share this information with them. But if you start telling all friends and family, you setting yourself up for some hurtful words down the line.
right,
That's just the reality, because we can't say, oh, your friends and family have to go to therapy, because some of them don't even believe, like, what is therapy?
exactly, exactly. And when you say that, I think it actually reminds me of sometimes when we see celebs who might be a certain age who then have children, people are sometimes saying, oh, they should tell us how it happened. And
Mhm.
I think there's the right balance, right? The person might tell you, I sought medical help, but they don't necessarily need to tell you all the details. So I think
Right.
oftentimes people feel pressure that they need to tell.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, with the internet and social media now, we just feel like everyone owes us an explanation.
Exactly. Like I need to know exactly what happened and when.
Why you have a baby at 50 something? You need to give me all the details.
Yeah.
They don't always that explanation, but at the same time, they should also, you could say I sought medical help,
Right.
but I saw something. I don't know if you saw the thing recently where I guess she's an actress who was like 54 and said she was in menopause and was
Yeah.
have some yams or something. And I was like,
And that's kind of stuff we get a lot of in Nigeria. Like people like, oh, I just, relaxed and then I prayed. And of course, I'm a big believer in prayer. So yes, I know you prayed.
right,
But can you
but
tell us you also went to the hospital? I don't need the details, but just
yeah,
tell me, right? Because then what happens is that some people never seek treatment because they said that person said they just ate yam or they just prayed and it happened. But that might not be the reality.
Exactly. So how many people are you sending a message to that is you're doing a disservice, like you said, to someone because now they wouldn't seek treatment. The longer you don't seek treatment, the percentage is getting smaller and smaller for
Right.
your ability to conceive. We're not saying you can't because we know anything can happen,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
let's be real. But if you're already in menopause, I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm like, wow, that's a real miraculous thing that happened. Like, show me what your hands are, you know. Let me eat.
Let me eat and let me sell them.
And if that's the case, I mean, nobody would need these medical interventions.
Exactly. I could save some money and just eat yams. Yeah.
But you're right, it's such a disservice to those who won't seek treatment. And because of this misinformation. So if you say I had medical intervention, I mean, whether or not you choose to share, but if you're going to share all this and be like, I was 54 and I just got pregnant, we're not saying you can't, but were you not menopausal already? Because some people have later
Right.
going to menopause later. But if you're already in menopause, that's like, wow. I mean, I, I don't know. I was like, I had to do the Liberia. I was like,
Yeah, yeah. Move along. Like, yeah, okay, sure.
let me go
Right.
find the yams.
So important. Thank you so much, Dr. Wiyatta. You have really spent a lot of time here um, highlighting and addressing many of the concerns that we have for lots of people trying to conceive, or people that have experienced loss or seeking alternative paths to parenthood. Of course, we cannot keep you here forever. So for anyone listening who might want to reach out to you or connect with you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach me on Instagram at Fertility Counseling Now. You can reach my website at fertilitycounselingnow.com. I'm also on TikTok, but I'm under Dr. Wiyatta. And on Fridays, I usually do all things fertility on Fridays. But you
Oh,
can
that's
reach,
pretty cool.
yeah. So my Dr. Wiyatta, because it's geared more towards like the professional women's side, but I do
Right.
all the fertility on Friday. So Fertility Counseling Now, one word, on Instagram and on my website.
Perfect. So I'll put the details as well in the show notes.
Thank
And
you.
as a wrap up, for anyone listening currently navigating their fertility journey, any words of advice or encouragement?
So give yourself some grace because this world is hard enough as is. Everybody's telling us what to do, what not to do, how to show up. Allow yourself some grace. Allow yourself to experience those emotions, no matter how ugly and shameful you may be of those emotions. Allow yourself to experience it because once you try to suppress it, it's going to come 10 times more than you want it to be. So experience it, go through it, acknowledge it, and then on the other side, you can accept it and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to move forward. Um, Remember to do those things. If you're individual, if it's just you and a couple, do those things that you enjoy. If you're a couple, do things together and also find time for yourself for the things that you enjoy. Remember, this is a journey. It's also only one part of your life story. It's not your entire life story. It doesn't define who you are as an individual. You're still all those things that you were before. This is just one part of your story. So you're not broken. Your story is just different. And your path to parenthood might not look like your sisters or your cousins or your best friend. It just might be different. But at the end of the day, what I say to clients is, do you have to carry? What if your body cannot carry? Do you have to carry, or do you want to be a parent at the end of the day? And if you want to be a parent, what does that journey look like to parenthood for you?
Thank you.
You're
So well
welcome.
said, Dr. Wiyatta. It's been amazing having you on here. I feel like I've been sitting actually doing a counseling session. I know that's not true, but hey, but it feels like that, you shed so much light on so many aspects of infertility and loss that oftentimes people are still concerned about and just don't know how to navigate it or how to proceed or how to seek um, some kind of advice. So thank you so much for your time today, for answering all our many questions,
You're
for
welcome.
providing insight and letting us know that it is possible to find support as we navigate the journey, whatever that might be for each person. Thank you so much for all that you do as well. And
you.
we look forward to having you again in the near future. We'll definitely be calling you back.
Thank you. This was amazing. I had such a great time talking to you.
Thank you. It was lovely having you here.